today, there's 4 billion people on social media pushing upwards of 200 billion messages into the world every day. It's super competitive. The biggest thing that controls reach and distribution of content is the algorithms. The algorithms only really care about one thing, and that's user retention. The longer people spend on these platforms, the more ads they can serve, the more profit that they generate. So when we look at content and extending your virality, you have to make it interesting to the general population. Even if they may not care about your subject, they may never have thought about your subject, you still have to play to them to get that maximum reach and distribution. So we call it the generalist approach. But you can find plenty of examples, especially on YouTube. As you know, Graham Stephan teaching finance to millennials. Typically finance is not a sexy subject, so what does he do? How I bought a Tesla for $78. Anybody can consume that content and gain value and entertainment out of it, but still he's playing to the core of his brand and reaching those people.
Welcome to the Think Media Show. My name is Heather Torres, the host of this show, where we want to help you grow your influence on YouTube and then turn that influence into a high income and a high impact online business. And if you're brand new and this is your first episode, we want to welcome you to what we're doing here at Think Media. We're creating a movement of content creators, and we're so grateful that you are here. And if you're one of our returning Think Media fan members, thanks for tuning in every single week. It's been exploding, and we're just so grateful that all that we're putting out there to you is valuable and helpful for your journey. Now, every single Tuesday, we release a brand new episode here on the YouTube channel and on the audio podcast. But if you're not yet seeing or hearing on either one of those platforms, we are putting out exclusive content just for YouTube and just for the audio. So make sure that you are investing in both of those so that you can be getting all of the value we have for you here at Think Media. And today is really special because we're talking all about viral video. I know, I want to learn how to go viral just like you do. So we brought the experts to the Think Media podcast. We are going to be talking about how to learn the essentials of a viral video, the tips for paid traffic and organic traffic on social media, and why the traditional approach to social media marketing doesn't work anymore. So you need this episode if you're trying to figure out how to make the right videos, to get in front of the right people, and get in front of as many people as possible. Well, today, Sean Cannell is sitting down with expert Brendan Kane. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Brendan Kane's work, today is going to be a breakthrough day for you. So get your pen and paper ready or your notes on your iPhone, and let's jump into our featured content.
Welcome back to the Think Media podcast. I'm super fired up because Brendan Kane is back with us. Brendan, I'm not sure if you know, but one of our most recommended books that we recommend to our podcast community and as a required reading for our content team is your book, Hook Point. And we got to talk about that last time. So, of course, we're going to link up that conversation in the show notes. But I'm super fired up to have you back on the podcast. How have things been?
They've been great. A little hectic traveling all over the world, but can't complain.
Can't complain when you're traveling and enjoying life. And man, I'm excited because we're going to talk about really some of the things that are just not working anymore on social media. A lot of things that creators, influencers, businesses are doing wrong. And we're going to talk about paid traffic versus organic traffic strategies. And I can't wait to talk about what you've called engineering virality. Right? And so with that, let's kind of dive in though, and maybe give us just an overview of who you are and how you help people for people that are just meeting you.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I've been in social media since the earliest stages. I started in 2004, 2005. So I've seen the whole evolution of this. Some people kind of look at me or other social media experts and they're like, oh, they've only been doing this for a few years. But myself and my team, we've been in the earliest stages and initially started in the film industry, building digital divisions for movie studios. And that was a unique experience because we would invest tens of millions of dollars into a single piece of content, and then we would need hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about this piece of content in a matter of months. We didn't have years, we didn't have decades. So that really trained me up on how to effectively harness the power of digital traffic and social media to really scale. And that's really how I got started in this whole space, is figuring out solutions to that big problem.
And one of the things you did, your first book was actually kind of also based on a case study of 1 million followers in 30 days?
Yeah. So I had spent first off, I went from film to paid media. And helped advise an agency where we were managing about $100 million in spend for like Fortune 100 brands. I just saw the tremendous inefficiencies of that process, because you would have a huge brand come to you with a piece of content that they would spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to produce. And then they were saying, hey, we want to spend millions of dollars against this piece of content. And when I had asked them, well, how do you know that this piece of content can perform to the tune of investing all of this money? They didn't have any data or analytics to support that decision. They were just doing it off of a creative hunch. And I thought that there must be a better way of going about that. So I left working on that company and started building a set of testing methodologies to test content at scale, to really understand what works, what content formats, what structures, storytelling techniques work, so that it would make sense to invest money. And then that extended to journalists, athletes, celebrities reaching out to me with their primary goal is, how do we build an audience so that we can monetize our presence through brand sponsorships and deals and things like that. So I spent about 3.5 years testing content. I probably tested over 100,000 variations of content over that time period. And then I could see the patterns, and I knew that I could do it for anybody starting from scratch. Because I would always get the question, well, Brendan, that's great. You've worked with like an MTV or a Taylor Swift, but it's not going to work for the average person. It's not going to work for me. But I knew it could work. So I thought, well, why not run an experiment to prove it? And I thought, why not do it on myself? Because I wasn't in television or film. I was behind the scenes that entire time. But why not do it on myself, starting from scratch, starting from zero, to prove this out? And that's where that experiment for the book 1 Million Followers came, of where I built 1 million followers in 30 days.
That's wild. And so can you unpack actually some of those best practices? And that maybe can help us. That was Instagram, correct?
I did Facebook first, and then I created another system for Instagram and hit 1 million followers on Instagram too.
Okay. And would you say that those principles still work today?
Yes, very much so.
So let's talk about a little best practices for Instagram that you discovered.
So we have a viral content engineering process, and this process works for any platform: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. And the reason that this platform or this process works, and works no matter what change happens, is it's deeply rooted into research. So what that means is, most people will think about research as, oh, I'm just going to look at my direct competitors and see what they're doing without really analyzing the results. And then they try and replicate that. But what we do oftentimes when we're working with a brand or a client, we look at their direct competition, but oftentimes the direct competition is not performing at a high level. So it'll tell you what not to do, which is important as well. So what we do is we extend research to other creators in different niches, whether it's influencers or brands, and really dissect what is causing them to go viral. And when we're looking at that, we're looking at nuances. So we have over 50 different performance indicators that we're looking at. So this goes down to like pacing, tonality, number of edits, first 3 seconds, thumbnail, headline, caption, all of these variables. And what we do is we have a research process that's called gold, silver, bronze. So we can take any account or any format, and we break it down into these 3 things: gold, silver, bronze. So gold is the highest performers. So that's like the viral one. So if we're looking at an Instagram account and their gold maybe is like 5 to 10 million views per video, and then we look at their silver, which is their baseline, their average, which may be like 1 million or under, and then bronze, which is their underperformers, which is like 100,000 or less. And for the average person, these numbers may be big, but you can still learn from it. So what we do with that is we study the gold, and we look for these performance drivers. We look at the hypotheses of what we think is causing this content to go viral. And again, it's not about the content, it's about the context. So the nuance, these nuanced details that I mentioned. But then once we come up with these hypotheses, then we have to check, do they show up in the silver and the bronze? Because if they show up in the silver and the bronze, we have to knock it out and start all over again until we find these performance drivers that don't show up in the silver and bronze. So that's the core crux of our process, and this process is backed by about 60 billion views and 100 million followers and $1 billion in revenue. And the reason it's so successful is we're not going after brand guidelines, we're not going after creative intuition and just driving into ideation. We're always starting with research first to determine what's working today, because as you know, things are changing constantly, whether it's a new feature like Instagram Reels, a new platform like TikTok, or the algorithm changes, things of that nature.
So let me know if I got it right, and I want to unpack some things for our listeners. The first that's so powerful that you said is the mistake people make is they only research their competitors, and their competitors might not be doing very well, or they only look if the other channels on YouTube, the other Instagram accounts they study, they may not be doing very well. And what you suggest is actually go find the people killing it the most on the platform. Extrapolate what you can learn from them and apply that to your content. And if you're just starting, that's your best case as well, because you don't have any of your own content to measure. So really try to reverse engineer content best platforms, not just the other real estate agents or the other people giving social media tips or the other people. That's incredibly powerful. Do I have that right?
Absolutely, because most people, they may not even look at their competitors. They may just jump into creative ideation, coming up with ideas and producing them and not really knowing. And the other big challenge is, like, even with like Instagram Reels or TikTok, they'll give you some free wins and you can go viral a few times. But if you don't understand why it went viral, then you can't reproduce it over and over again. And that's where you see people build large followings, but you see a huge discrepancy in their performance, as maybe their hit rate is 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30 that go viral, versus our passion and what we want to do is how do we get that hit rate to like 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3. So there's not this wave and fluctuation of performance in your content.
Beautiful. And that, again, you could start applying that. You're saying research. One of the things you should start with is research, which is actually we have in our proprietary process for YouTube, our first R is reverse engineer. Our second one is then research. Start with the end in mind and then start actually researching first before you press record. And so if you don't have content, you could study best practices. If you do have content, go into your library and look at your gold, your silver, and your bronze and try to identify the winners and pull principles out of those. Is that accurate? Because once you've got a data set, how many videos do you think people need to post? They always ask this. Let's just say YouTube. You have a YouTube channel. How big of a data set, 10 videos posted, 20, 30, would you say you need to actually start getting some enough insights of your own content to start pivoting your strategy?
Well, I think you can start with as little as 10, but the big thing is what is your performance to date? Because if you haven't broken through, then analyzing your own content is not really going to help. If you haven't gotten a breakthrough video that's had a few million views, then it's going to be tough because you're looking at underperforming content. So what we always want to do when we're doing research and insights is figuring out how we break through. How do we break through at the highest levels? Because that's how you learn, is looking at the top content creators on the planet. So I wouldn't recommend really diving too deep into your content until you've had that breakthrough performance. But in addition, like as you know with YouTube, you can start looking at your retention graph. You can look at your click-through rate on thumbnails and things like that to see where that's falling off to fix the problem. Like if you have a high click-through rate on your thumbnail, but your retention's not good, or your retention's good, but the click-through on your thumbnail is not good, that gives you a clear indication of where your performance is breaking down. But just be very careful of analyzing your own content in the beginning, because it may just get you in this hamster wheel of just doing low performing content and not looking at the things that really truly break through.
Beautiful. Now, one thing I know that will pique our listeners' mind, though, is your definition of what breakthrough is. And would you say that breakthrough is only millions of views, or is there a place where actually a lot of our clients sometimes are in like hyper specific niches? And sometimes we use the term VFM, viral for me, because if you're getting 10,000 views or 15,000 views and you're a loan officer, and that's leading to just an outrageous amount of inbound leads that's helping you grow your business. You're in financial services. You're in local real estate. One of the people in our community, Levi from living in Dallas, him and his partner Travis did something like 92 million in the top line real estate revenue, which translated to 3.2 million in real estate commissions. And they were under 5,000 YouTube subscribers, but they just had so much inbound of people finding their channel, finding their content about specific neighborhoods. So yeah, frame that up, because you're this viral specialist, but I think that maybe sometimes listeners might feel a pressure that if I don't get 1 million views, there's not necessarily a viable business there, or I'm not winning. Where we've actually seen sometimes smaller numbers, if it's the right viewers, can be all you need to accomplish your end goal for your business.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And kind of when I talk about breakthrough performance, it's in the research and insights process. So when we're analyzing other accounts, we want to be analyzing accounts that are doing in the millions of views. Now, that doesn't mean that has to be the goal for yourself. But they're obviously hitting a chord. They understand the nuances of how to tell a story, how to grab attention, how to hold attention. So what we're saying is, let's look at the highest performers in social, learn what is causing them to have that level of virality, and then take those learnings and apply it to our content. And like you said, is like one of the great analogies that I say is, let's just say your video performance on average is 1,000 views a video. And of those 1,000 people viewing each one of your videos, 50% is your core target. Now, let's say that we do this research and we master the nuances of what's causing these other creators to go viral. And then we take our video performance from 1,000 views to 100,000 views. And obviously, as we know, with scale, that core percentage of your target is going to drop. Let's say it drops down to 20%. We just went from 500 potential customers to 20,000 with each video that we're producing. So the goals are personal to yourself. Like you said, you don't have to be in the millions of views to build a business, to build an audience. But we're saying, let's study the people at the highest levels to learn what they're doing so that we can, apply it. Because if we're, let's just say, in the 10,000 views a video or 100,000 views a video, and we're just studying other people that are at 10,000 or 100,000, you're not going to figure out really how to break through and take it to that next level.
I love that. That's incredible clarity. Let's kind of pivot to get some of your best practices by going from the mistakes angle. So you get to observe, of course, brands and businesses. Our listeners are individual creators for the most part, many that are in the education niche. And so they're, again, real estate, fitness, some on the entertainment side and more vlogging, but it could be DIY crafts, sewing, parents that maybe are helping other parents with solve problems, tech reviewers, all kinds of different things, teaching something on YouTube predominantly. The mistakes people are making that are just killing viral before it even starts. What are some of the biggest ones that you see people making today?
Yeah, we just covered the research side, which I think is a huge place that people are falling flat. I mean, that's why we've pivoted our entire company only to do research and insights. We don't produce content or anything. All we do is deliver research and insights to creatives. But I think the other big, and I don't know if I want to call it a mistake, it's not understanding the world that we live in today. So when I started in social, I remember the exact day MySpace released a press release saying that they reached 1 million users. And that was a huge thing. You fast forward today, there's 4 billion people on social media pushing upwards of 200 billion messages into the world every day.
Wow.
It's super competitive. And as you and I know, the biggest thing that controls reach and distribution of content is the algorithms. And there's a lot of misunderstanding of the algorithms. And one of them is they suppress your reach on purpose to get you to pay for reach. That's not the case because nobody would ever go viral. The algorithms only really care about one thing, and that's user retention. The longer people spend on these platforms, the more ads they can serve, the more profit that they generate. So what they're really looking for is content that they can see to the widest possible audience and hold that attention for the widest possible or for time. So when we look at content and extending your virality, one of the things that you had mentioned is niche business owners. So even with a niche business, you have to make it interesting to the general population. Even if they may not care about your subject, they may never have thought about your subject, they may not be your core customer, you still have to play to them to get that maximum reach and distribution. So we call it the generalist approach. We're not saying ditch kind of the context that you want to provide to your core audience, but how do we make it interesting to anybody? So most people think, oh, you can't do that for a niche thing. My subject matter is not sexy or interesting. But you can find plenty of examples, especially on YouTube. Clear tax value. It's a YouTube account with over 1 million subscribers. They're averaging 300,000 to 500,000 views a video. They have several videos over 1 million views. It's about taxes. As you know, Graham Stephan, teaching finance to millennials. Like, typically finance is not a sexy subject, so what does he do? How I bought a Tesla for $78. He's making it interesting to anybody that wants to view that content, but he's still teaching the fundamentals that he wants to deliver. Or a real estate agent, Ryan Serhant, over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. What does he do? He sells property to a very specific audience, people that can afford 10, 20, 30, $50 million properties in New York. But he makes it interesting by saying, hey, let me take you on a tour of a $7 million closet. Let me take you on a tour of a $250 million ranch. Anybody can consume that content and gain value and entertainment out of it, but still he's playing to the core of his brand and reaching those people. Even if it's a fraction of 1% off 1 million views, that's extremely meaningful. So I think that generalist approach to content is where most people are still operating on the old paradigm, which worked before when there was less people on the platforms, less competition. But when we look at the fact that there's 4 billion content creators on the planet, we really need to play to what really controls reach and distribution and virality, which is the algorithms.
Well, I hope that you are enjoying today's conversation. And I wanted to let you know that if you want to go deeper with us here at Think Media, one of the best ways to do that, to further your online education, is to take one of our free on-demand classes. You can go to thinkmasterclass.com, where we do a 1-hour free deep dive class into what's working on YouTube right now and how you can gain subscribers and views and income from your YouTube channel. We have several different options for you, but the latest video for you to watch is at thinkmasterclass.com. This video is not available anywhere on YouTube. This is only exclusively for our Think Media community who are ready to go deeper with us. At the end of that class, we share with you an opportunity to become one of our members inside of this movement of content creators making a difference in the world. So go to thinkmasterclass.com right now to get signed up for your free 1-hour YouTube on-demand class. Now, let's get back into today's featured content.
So, number one, it's a huge mistake if you're not doing your research first. Number two, not understanding the platforms and operating in the old paradigm and not the new paradigm. What are some other old paradigm mistakes you see people making?
Well, I think frequency is a big one. And I'm not saying frequency doesn't have its place. Frequency can lead to success, but only once you fundamentally understand your format. What works, what doesn't work. You know, I see a lot of people talking about you need to be posting every day, multiple times a day, but how does that help you? Especially what we talked about the algorithms. The algorithms are not going to reward you because you're producing more content. They're going to reward you because you're producing content that grabs and holds attention for as long as possible. I think also there's still, and again, I'm not going to say that this was never a play, but people are so focused on like hashtags, time of day, things of that nature, which those things aren't going to take a poorly constructed piece of content and automatically going to make it perform. So our core focus is on the content itself. And we're a big proponent of quality over quantity. I'd rather see somebody spend 2 weeks or a month on a single video than to burn themselves out creating a piece of content every day and not learning from it. Again, there are content creators that have mastered their format and can scale with that. But if you're just starting out or you haven't really broken through, I always recommend taking a step back and really getting something to perform and then increase the frequency if you deem that that's appropriate. I mean, we know Mr. Beast, he's the most subscribed person on YouTube across all his channels. It's like he'll take months to produce a single video. And even in the beginning, he would take that time to really master that art of what it takes to create content that holds attention.
And I'm glad you brought this up. This is a huge debate. And I know people are like, okay, is it quality? Is it quantity? Speak about the timeline to that, because sometimes quantity at first can be like your first few days of showing up at the gym, though, to develop just some basic fundamentals of form, maybe even before you're ready to dial in quality. And to that point, I think Mr. Beast had 200 videos out before he even kind of got a little bit of steam. So there was quite a bit of a quantity before he learned the nuances that he knows today. So people are looking for like a black or white answer. And I do feel like it is a little bit gray. I like that you're saying ultimately quality, especially if you study Mr. Beast, there's a play there. But then there's others, and a guy I'm watching is one rental at a time. It's a very niche news show for people that want to do real estate and rentals. Meet Kevin for a while, who also, similar to Graham Stephan and Andre, he was doing 3 videos a day, a lot of financial news, not live streams. He would shoot them quick, edit them quick, jump on some headlines. He was pulling 20, 45, 65,000. So I feel like, and fighting for the listener, can you give me an answer? I mean, it's this quality, quantity tension. There's a lot of different distinctions on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that going back to Mr. Beast, because he was recently on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan asked him, like, how did you learn how to go viral? And Joe, not understanding this, said, did you watch some tutorials on YouTube? And he was like, no, there was no such thing at the time. So, and I think he said that he was like in the 60,000 sub range, but he found 4 other crazy lunatics that were high school dropouts. And for 1,000 days straight, they would jump on Skype for up to 10 hours a day, breaking down every nuance of virality, putting 1,000 thumbnails and measuring like color and gradients and things like that. And he said after that exercise of doing it, all of the people in that group accelerated their growth dramatic. They were all over 1 million subscribers in a few months. So even him, he was in that process of understanding, doing the research. I recently hired a young kid that started on YouTube when he was 10 years old, and he was producing content every day for years, and he didn't have any growth.
Wow.
But then when he started doing the research and understanding it, that's when he exploded and built a channel with 1 million subscribers. So again, it's like that research and insights part is critically important. I do believe to what you said is you don't want to like get into analysis paralysis. You do want to create content. The biggest thing is, are you learning with each piece of content that you're creating? Because I think so much of the frequency game is just produce content and things will magically happen. But again, maybe you have 1 or 2 that work, but if you don't understand, then it's like, well, how do you reproduce those results? And again, Reels and TikTok, because of the way the algorithms are structured, they're giving some free wins out there to get people, addicted to producing content for the platform. But then you see people fall off a cliff. And I remember this. So I did the first ever influencer campaign on YouTube in 2007. So I was in that insular community of the first ever YouTubers. And it was interesting because in the beginning, it was much easier because there was no such thing as an influencer. And they were having these free wins. And I'm not saying that their content wasn't good, but they were growing like crazy. And then as more people got on the platform, the algorithm shifted a little bit, there was a huge crash. And a lot of influencers got wiped out at that point because the ones that succeeded were like, okay, we're going to figure this out. We're going to understand what was the change. How do I hold attention? How do I really create better content? And those people survived the crash and picked back up.
Wow. One thing I heard you say in terms of best practices, new paradigm, old paradigm, was you don't really recommend batch producing. Why is that?
Because we see that, so basically our process is we do research and insights, and we create hypotheses around these performance drivers. And again, it's not about the content, it's about the context. And then we create those hypotheses, and then we go into the ideation phase. So we don't create ideas until we've done the research, so that we have data-informed ideas. But then we go into single production iteration. So we produce 1 piece of content at a time. And the reason that we do that is when we review the results, we want to understand, did our hypothesis hold true? And if the video underperformed, 2 things happened. It's either we chose the wrong hypothesis or we didn't execute the hypothesis correctly. And one of the easiest exercises people could do is in that research process, we create a reference. We single down into a reference that we want to emulate from a storytelling perspective. And after we produce that piece of content, we put the new piece of content on one side of the screen and the reference on the other, and we play it side by side and really have an honest look. Did we really replicate the performance drivers that we set forth? Versus if we're batch producing content, it gets lost. You may set a hypothesis for 10 pieces of content, but again, if you didn't execute that hypothesis correctly, or if you chose the wrong performance driver in that hypothesis process, then you just basically spent all this time and energy on 10 pieces of content that you could have knocked out with just doing one. So that's why we don't really suggest doing batch unless you really have a strong data and analytics way of analyzing each piece of content on its own.
And to be clear, and you could speak directly into our strategy, like right now, you and I are on a video podcast.
Yeah.
This video podcast comes out every Tuesday. There's no reason why we're avoiding going viral, but I have a feeling this podcast is not going viral. It's also hitting the audio platforms. It's for a very niche audience. And we do want to grow the podcast. Clips from it certainly could do well, and we are not only executing that, but we're going to execute that even more. But in some cases, batching might have a place. Would you agree or disagree? Where if you're doing something like what we're doing right now, but really what you help people with is engineering viral, that there's maybe some of your energy that you want to devote towards these breakout pieces of content. And in that case, batching would not be the proper approach.
Yeah, I would even say, like with podcasts, like the approach that I would do is do research on Lex Fridman, do research on H3, do research on Joe Rogan, and study those nuances of those breakthroughs and apply it to each podcast that you do. Because there are very clear patterns. They're very nuanced. Like you have to really understand what you're looking for. But there are very clear patterns that you can take away with each piece of each podcast or long form piece of content, or even the clips that you can learn from to apply to that. So I would say our process is for any type of content that you're producing, whether you anticipate it going viral or not, my kind of philosophy is if you're going to produce a piece of content, why not maximize the potential of it and learn with it? Because I think another thing that you'll see on all channels is you'll see people that have like 2 million subscribers, but then they're generating like 10,000 views a video. And that's a shame because they spent all this time, energy, and effort accumulating this audience, and the algorithms aren't seeding their content to that audience. So why not take all of the time and energy that you've put into accumulate that audience to just get better at reaching more and more of it?
Strong. Who are some of the top of mind YouTube channels specifically that maybe lean more educational? You mentioned some of them earlier, but when you look at YouTube channels to study that our listeners may want to check out, that are maybe lesser known, and people a lot of times will mention the big names. They'll mention a Mr. Beast, or in personal finance, a Graham Stephan. But what are some interesting channels that we could learn some lessons from?
I think Clear Tax Value. Listen, they're not going super viral with every video, but their baseline is really strong. Their baseline is 300,000 to 500,000 views a video, and that, for taxes, that's pretty amazing. Dr. Mike is a well-known one, but he's taken medical to that. I don't know how well Ryan Serhant is known in your circles, but I think he's done an amazing job of the generalist approach. We've done a lot of work with Mind Valley, which is an education company. Their performance is all over the place, but they do have some major breakthroughs in performance. I think from a podcast perspective, it's really fascinating to look at Lex Fridman because he's a disciple of Joe Rogan, and he's kind of mastered some of those. So I think looking at, if you're in the podcasting space, looking at kind of what he's done is pretty interesting. Those are ones I can think of off the top of my head. I may come up with some more.
Beautiful. People ask paid versus organic growth and paid versus organic strategies. What are kind of the pros, cons, and mistakes when people should be thinking about both of those approaches to generate really a business result?
Okay, so there's two parts to that. So let's just talk about organic, for example. I would never put paid behind an organic piece of content that is underperforming because, again, paid is just going to give you reach. It's not going to cause somebody to stop and watch the content. So we have used in the past very successfully is like if you have a viral piece of content that takes off, there's always going to be a plateau. And that's a time where you can use paid to push it again to see if the algorithms pick up on it and that organic reach pulls off. Paid is a very effective tool from a direct response standpoint, but we want to separate organic from paid. So we see organic as a tool to earn the right to make a sale. and then paid as a tool to retarget that organic to make a more direct response call to action. You can also use paid for cold audiences too effectively if you, again, know how to effectively tell stories, if you know how to do the research and insights on other ad creators and dissect what they're doing well.
So one of the things you're mentioning is that you want to create generalist content and at times have that generalist strategy. You reach a large audience that gives you more people to retarget. Have you found it to be effective? Though, is retargeting lower cost in that case? If you've reached a generalist audience, like you said, it may not be your ideal customer. And I watched a training video from you where you broke down a case study of John Cena being in whatever brand and having just kind of a wide, entertaining, far-reaching viral piece of content first, and then they were able to retarget. Can you tell that story and maybe illuminate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so my friends run a company called Shareability. They're one of the top viral video creators on the planet for like Fortune 100 brands. And they took this approach of entertaining first, earning the right to sell. So they did a campaign with the wrestler John Cena where they were in a store and they had a background of John Cena, like a paper background, and they had fans standing in front of it saying why they love John Cena. And then he would jump out the back and surprise them and get that shock factor. Generated several 100 million views organically. But what they saw was, okay, we're not there. It was for Cricket Wireless, and they did have Cricket Wireless branding on it, but they didn't make any type of sale in that. It was just entertainment value. So then they did a direct response ad targeting those people saying, hey, this is John Cena. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you're interested in learning more about Cricket Wireless, go to this destination. It was wildly successful. So they reproduced that viral video, but the reverse side. So John Cena came in thinking he was going to do the exact same thing before, but this time it was the fans surprising him. So he was sitting behind the cameras in a different room, and he didn't know this was happening, but fans came in and started reading emotional letters about how they've impacted his life, and it brought John Cena to tears. Again, there's no sale that's going through that, but they earned that right, and then they retargeted them with ads. Now, like I have a friend, Craig Clemens, who's the top copywriter in the world. He created a company called Golden Hippo. They've sold over $2 billion worth of products, and they sell it direct off of cold ads. But what they do is they tell that story in the ad. Like these ads are like 30 to 40 minutes long. So they're telling this story through the ads and building that emotional connection, building that trust and credibility. So there's multiple different ways that you can go about it. There's no one way to go to make a sale or to leverage paid. But just I think a big mistake that people make is they treat their organic feed as kind of like an ad feed, and that always falls flat.
Yeah, so treat your organic feed as storytelling, meet people, edutainment. You need to entertain, storytell, connect emotionally, and that's going to ultimately lead to your best business results. I heard you say really the business is driving social in a lot of cases when instead social should be driving the business. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, so when we look at major brands like Apple, I don't know what their subscribers, it's tens of millions of subscribers. That's not driven by social. That's driven by their brand equity and the hundreds of millions of dollars or more that they're spending on ads on external places. You look at like The Rock, for example. I think he's the most followed person on Instagram now. People think, oh, he did that organically. No, he didn't. Like every movie that he's in, they spend $150 million to promote. He's on the cover of every magazine. He's on billboards. He's on television ads. Like those are external forces that are driving that in. I'm not diluting it by any means, but oftentimes we look at large brands or large celebrities and we're trying to study how they grew their audience. And a lot of times it's external factors that are driving that growth and not an internal factor like a Mr. Beast that's purely grown off of social. So it's really understanding the delineation between those two.
I love that. So, and you'd be better off studying the homegrown, and you had a case study in that training video between Chanel and Best.Dress. And it was the fact that these homegrown social accounts are much more effective in a lot of situations than these big brands who do have huge amounts of followers, but way less engagement because they're not doing the best practices, right?
Yeah, 100%. And there's examples of like multi-level marketing and network marketing is like we're working with one of the largest companies in the world because they have 2.5 million brand reps. And those people are the reason for their success, and they're all selling through social. So for us, it's like that homegrown approach is working for them. Now, how do we amplify it? So it's like, again, there's other ways to go about it, like network marketing, multi-level marketing. They have all of these brand reps that are pushing their product for them as well.
Awesome. As we land the plane, I do want to get you to give me your next few moves that you'd recommend for starting now, if you feel like you're starting from scratch and the competition is too big. But before we get there, of course, I want to recommend the listeners grab your book, Hook Point, and we'll link everything up in the show notes. But you also have goviral.hookpoint.com. What are people going to find there if people want to connect with you and work with you?
Yeah, so at goviral.hookpoint.com, essentially is we do the research for you. So every week we're breaking down a new influencer, content creator, brand, and we're going in depth into why they're going viral. So we do that gold, silver, bronze research for you. We give you that research sheet. We also give you a recording, an hour-long recording of us breaking down and talking to that research sheet. And then we also give an activation guide that's like a 10 to 13-page PDF that breaks down all the things that we've learned and key takeaways that they can apply to their social strategy.
Amazing. So if you're interested in that, you can check all those links out in show notes, whether on YouTube or, of course, the audio podcast show notes. As we land the plane, if someone's looking at the giant of the close of 2022 going into 2023, man, competition is big. Of course, consumption is higher than ever before. The new numbers I heard is this 2.6 million monthly active users on YouTube. And there is growth in these platforms, new emergers. TikTok is blowing up. I've heard Facebook organic has a revival happening there, and I'm sure you're always seeing great stuff happening on Facebook. So there is, of course, the big opportunity, but could it be more real that the competition is there, that it's hard to get reach? Especially when you're just starting, it could seem like there's a major uphill battle. What would just be your 1, 2, 3, first couple steps for the person that feels stuck and is trying to start from scratch and get like their first 1,000 subscribers on YouTube?
Well, I would assume that most of these people are using these platforms. So when you're using these platforms for your personal consumption, take an active approach instead of a passive approach. When you're watching content, try and understand, why did I choose to click and watch this video? What is it about this video that's holding my attention? In addition, if there's videos that you scroll past, what was not interesting about that? So really just start to try and learn from the content that you're consuming to understand what is driving performance and what is not driving performance. And listen, it takes time to get good at. That's why our whole company is based upon research to do it for people. But just try and become a student of the game. So I think that that's the first piece of advice. And then secondarily is really, whether you're batch producing content, creating a piece of content individually, are you learning from each piece of content that you're performing? And if you're just starting out, you may not have videos that are performing, but are you trying to learn what is causing it not to perform? So like we said earlier, look at your thumbnail click-through rate, look at your retention graph, which one is broken? Is it you're just not getting enough people in the door? Or is it that you're getting people in the door, but they're not staying for a long period of time? So again, just be conscious of the content that you're producing and try and analyze the results. And then the final thing is, it's just a mindset thing. It's like, you've said this in several videos, but are you in this for the long haul? This isn't a magic pill. This takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to work. And if you put that time and energy in and you learn what causes content to succeed, what content goes viral, and what detracts from that virality, you will ultimately hit it. Because that's where most people fail is, A, they're not doing the research, they're not understanding it, but B, they get creative burnout, and then they just stop.
Strong. One more question. Books that have influenced you the most in regards to building a business, marketing, I don't know how many social media books are out there. Of course, people should read yours, but maybe it's even something that's a little more obscure that you've extrapolated principles to for winning in a 2022, 2023 world, even from older school. What are some of your favorites?
I would say my favorite book of all time is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, first off, it's just amazingly written, and I think you learn a lot about human psychology and your kind of preconceived notions about how you're representing yourself versus how people perceive you. And then I think that there's some interesting books on psychology, like Contagious by Jonah Berger, or even Malcolm Gladwell's book. I mean, we layer a lot of human behavior and psychology into the work that we do because it's such a fundamental process of being able to tap into audiences at scale.
Yeah, those are some great recommendations. And of course, you can always check out the show notes for anything else along those lines. Brendan, appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to connect with you and everybody that tuned in for this.
Wow, wasn't that just amazing content? I'm ready to make a viral video. How about you? Well, this episode is so power-packed that I recommend that you go back and listen to it. Or if you've not yet watched it over on YouTube, I recommend going and watching it too. Sometimes just changing how you're receiving information can really help to soak it in more. So if you listen to this, go over and watch it. If you watch this, go over and listen to it as well. Well, I want to thank our Think Media community for supporting us here on this free show. It's been amazing to see this community grow and to see all of your comments flooding in on YouTube and on the rating and review feature over on Apple Podcasts. Today, I want to shout out Rory and Sage from our Think Media community. Congratulations on almost 1,000 subscribers, guys. They're at 864 at the time of recording. So I know you're almost to that 1,000. So I'm going to forward congratulate you on that. And thank you for leaving this comment. This is so inspiring and motivating. It's like hanging out with other creators. Love it. Well, Rory and Sage, we cannot wait to hang out with you soon. And thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here on Think Media and over on the podcast as well. It's so encouraging to read your comments and to hear what your aha moments are from different episodes like this. And when we bring on our guests, you guys are so honoring to them inside of the comments. And I know that that'll be the same for this episode as well. Well, again, if you've not yet signed up for our latest free YouTube class, that could be your next step with us, where we're going to be breaking down the secrets to success on YouTube, what's working right now and what's not, and how you can get breakthrough and make your first $1,000 or get your first 1,000 subscribers on YouTube without a fancy camera, without years of editing experience, and without having to spend 50 hours a week on your YouTube channel. You can sign up for that free class over at thinkmasterclass.com or click on the link down in the description box below or in the show notes. Well, thanks so much for listening, and we are so excited for some of the future content we have for you. So stay locked here, subscribed wherever you're listening, and we'll see you in a future episode. Bye.